So I'm doing a One Piece video. I haven't done a One Piece video for a little bit, but considering what happened in the last chapter and some ideas I had about the Seraphim, the Seraphim Pacifistas, I kind of wanted to do a video. So yeah, this will be fun. In regards to just kind of my take on what happened, and I know everybody else, all the other One Piece YouTubers are going to have their own take and such, and beyond watching like one or two chapter reviews, I have not watched any other specific discussions on the Seraphim yet. So if I make a reference to something that someone else referenced, sorry, but that was not my intention. But considering the two things I'm going to kind of reference about the Seraphim, is going to be possibly similar to how someone else put it, but maybe I'll have hit on a button that nobody else did, or that very few did. We'll find out. Then again, considering not many people watch these videos yet, but maybe by the time they do, I don't know, we'll see. But first off, I had two things I wanted to point out in this video. One, yesterday we had the Husker game, and yesterday when the day that I'm recording this is the Sunday that is Grandparents' Day. So, we do know what happened in the football game that I talked about in the Grandparents' Day video. Huskers lost. Boo. Huskers lost. Scott Frost, who's our head coach, got fired. So, yeah. We'll see what's going to happen with that for our football team. Not mad at the players. Not mad at the other team. I never get mad at the other team or our current players because, I mean, like, occasionally our players make, like, a stupid call or something like that. But I'm not going to get mad at the other team because we lost. There's no point in that. The other team had played a very good game. I know one of their players, I think, got hurt. I hope he's okay. I do not remember what the other team was. I apologize. But the other thing I wanted to point out was a shout out to the newest queen that we have in One Piece, and that is former Queen Shaki. And I love Shaki. I've loved her ever since she was first introduced in Sabaody. I love the fact that our first introduction to her is Hachi going, "Come on, let's go see this bar. This lady that I know owns this bar here, Shaki's Ripoff Bar. This does not sound like a good place to go. Go inside, see very beautiful woman beating up a bunch of very low-level pirates, possibly, but considering information we just found out about her, makes her even cooler. And she's just like, pay me back, I don't care," and drops them. And she just, like, goes and talks to the Straw Hats and, like, talks to them, and she knows Rayleigh, and they're possibly married. I don't know. I had a whole video about that they're possibly married. I don't know. Considering how much they are around each other, maybe they are. But I love the fact that we found out that she's the queen from like 3 generations ago of the of Amazon Lily of the Kuja Pirates, and that she was their former captain at one point. And that explains a whole lot about like how her and Rayleigh were able to help the Boa sisters, you know, Hancock and Marigold and Sandersonia, how them and Glorioso, how they were able to help them and everything. Also kind of explains a little bit of why the Kuja, specifically Boa and her sisters, considering their history with the outside world, are okay with Rayleigh. Because if Shaki, one of their former queens, is okay with Rayleigh, that kind of like gives them a little bit more of a, okay, yeah, no, it's fine to be around Rayleigh. He's okay. He's a helpful person. He's on our side. So we at least get that. That explains some of that. I do also want to touch on the fact that there is this whole fan theory that like Mihawk is Rayleigh and Shaki's son, and this does not disprove this theory by any means, but if it does mean that if he is their son, then he is also by technicality a descendant of the Kuja, which then just adds to Mihawk's coolness, because all the Kuja and all the people on Amazon Lily are all women, and then now we have this possible connection, if it is true, but that's something that'll probably never get revealed in the actual story unless it's like big final battle, Rayleigh and Shockey show up to like help the Straw Hats because they like arrived with the Kuja, since they're with the Kuja right now, that they might just arrive with the Kuja and help the Straw Hats either at Laugh Tale or against the world government, because I can guarantee you that the Boa sisters want their payback on the Celestial Dragons, on the Tenryubito. They want their payback. Oh boy, do they want their payback. And now that they're not warlord, now that she's not not a warlord anymore, isn't like specifically, you know, assigned to the world government, now Hancock has a little bit more of a leeway in going after them. So we'll see what happens with that. On top of her whole, she's Luffy's ally and wants to marry him and everything. But like it could just be that like the Kuja roll up, you know, their big ship, the I knew the name of the ship because I had to talk about it at one point. For Perfume Yuba. Yuba perfume, something like that. It's like perfume is in it, and then like Yuba is in there, I believe. And like if the ship shows up at like, you know, Laugh Tale or Marine Ford or somehow on the Red Line or whatever during this whole battle and everything, and the Kuja pirates show up and help Luffy and them, that like Rayleigh and Shockey are there with them, and it's just like Mihawk happens to be there either because stuff happened with the Cross Guild. I'll get to the Cross Guild too. Stuff happens with the Cross Guild. And then maybe, like, the Cross Guild disbands and Mihawk's gonna go, okay, I'm gonna go hang out with Shanks. And then, like, Shanks helps Luffy. And then, like, they show up and, like, all these forces converge. And then, like, Mihawk sees Shockey and Rayleigh. And he's like, hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Leaving. Well, I don't know. There's a whole theory there. But... So I just want to do a shout out to Shockey there, because I love Shockey. And I am actually working on a series right now that's, don't know exactly when it's going to start airing yet, but I'm working on a series where I talk about the different rulers and leaders, as in like, rulers as in like either nobles or like royalty that's in One Piece, but also like leaders as in like the mayors or something like that we see in One Piece. So like, you know, Whoop Slap or, you know, Iceberg in, you know, in Water 7 and such like that, and then like the different royal families and stuff like that we've seen in One Piece, and do like discussion videos on those different ones. But that I'm working on at the moment, and now I can add Shockey into that discussion when I talk about Amazon Lily, so that'll be fun. But moving on into the actual reason why I did this or why I'm doing this video. So the other day, Grand Line Review, who's of course this other really big YouTube One Piece guy, he lives in Australia, and I'm one of his subscribers, and like he put up a comment question thing on his one of his posts, and I answered it with my own comment, and I'm like, I highly doubt he's going to use this in the video anyway, because it didn't get any likes or anything like that, so I highly doubt it's one that he noticed, or maybe he did notice it, and this is coming out after he did his video or before or whatever. But the comment that I put was, I love the thought that the SSG's idea was, how about we take the warlords and make them children? We can also give them wings, lasers, and tans. And hey, while we're at it, let's just throw in Star Eyes as well. Vegapunk, yeah, just do that. Vegapunk comes to the side, yeah, do that. Sure, go ahead, do that. Over here, I'm working on something else. And I just like, I love this thought, and like the other part of the comment was, I kind of also want this to mean that there's like a young version of Buggy out there. Who, and depending on how long they've been planning this, possibly even Doflamingo and Crocodile, and we could have a Cross Guild versus mini Cross Guild fight in the future. That is both cute and terrifying. And then I did like a little thing about Shockey and everything. So, I wanted to go over this, just my thoughts on the Seraphim that were just introduced, the Seraphim models of the Pacifistas. We've seen, of course, the other Pacifista models. Of course, the original ones that are, of course, just strictly based on Kuma. And, of course, have the lasers from the Pika Pika no Mi. And then, of course, we move into, there's a set that was, like, in the, it wasn't in Stampede. It was in Film Z. With Zephyr and the Neo Marines and everything. So we see these like Shiro versions of the Pacifistas that are like more white palette and everything. It's just like, turn up the brightness on the Pacifistas and give them new coats. And so we have that. And then now we have these new models that seem to be the most refined models of them. so far. These ones are called the Seraphim, or the Seraph. One thing that has also happened in regards to One Piece because of the chapter, it has caused lots of One Piece people to have to understand the hierarchy of angels inside like Judaism and Christianity and Islam, which is kind of funny. So I kind of find that funny. And like, as soon as I read Seraphim and the thing, I'm like, I know what that is. I know what those are. My grandfather, who's a pastor, I mentioned to him that there's like this new thing in this manga. He has no idea what the manga is about or anything like that, but like I mentioned that like, oh, they have these new things in there that are called Seraphim, and he knew exactly what that was. And I said, and they're actually kind of like children that they've turned into weapons, so that's not a good thing. And he's just like, yeah, no, that's not a good thing. So yeah, even my grandfather's like, no, that's a horrible idea. Why did they do that? I mean, in regards to the context of like how they're using them, and you know, it's bad that they took this thing as Seraphim, because Seraphim, Seraph, within the context of Christianity are the highest level of angel that are just like, they're directly below God and Jesus. And they have these 6 beautiful burning wings, and like one set covers their eyes and one set covers their feet, and then the other set like flies them around. Different variations of angels exist, of course, because there's also cherubim that are like cherubs, also in Christianity, and these have different iterations in both Islam and Judaism as well. And seraphim just kind of translates to the burning one. So, yeah, they're mentioned in various places throughout, the Bible and the Torah and the Quran and several other various biblical texts and stuff like that. They surround the throne of God and continuously crying, holy, 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 again and again and again, which actually is part of various hymns, of course. Cherubim and seraphim, some of those are referenced occasionally in different religious services. And actually, at some point, there'll be a Digimon video where I get to talk about these as well, but that'll be way down the line because that's not until season 3 of Frontier. And so we get a lot of that. Also, the Seraphim are also extremely strong, and they usually tend to cause problems sometimes for people that like go against God. So yeah, but then again, bringing that into context in regards to One Piece, we know that the being in the context in regards to One Piece was like the Seraphim being like defenders of gods. We know that the celestial dragons, specifically the Gorosei, and then and then Im-sama at the top, they see themselves as God. For all we know, Im-sama is a god. We don't know. And it could be that by the time, that they have Vegapunk develop these things, and they give him like this design, because clearly they also look like the Lunarians with the wings and the tan skin that they're stated to have, and the fire coming off their back. So they're clearly also based on Lunarians as well. So the way that I kind of see it is they had these, they had King's DNA, because considering how long he was possibly at Punk Hazard, they probably have several samples of his genetics, along with any other, unfortunately, any other Lunarians that they've captured. They would have taken that DNA, and then they used that, they combine that with like the Pacifista technology that they have for the lasers and stuff like that. And then, considering the fact that the 2 that we've seen so far, one looks like Mihawk and one looks like Boa, and they look like the child versions of them. The fact that they have these child versions means that, they're children, so that means that people are going to hesitate to attack them, particularly if they're like a child that has like angel wings on them. That's going to like make people hesitate, because that's like this very holy image. Even if you don't know what like a Lunarian is, you're going to see this, this child with wings, and you're like, why is there an angel here? Why is there a child here? And then it'll attack you with its giant sword or laser. I highly doubt it can turn anybody to stone like Boa can, but that one probably also just has like other features as well. I don't think we saw them in the little bit that we saw in the chapter with them, I don't think we saw them use hockey. So I don't know if they can use hockey or not. But, you know, if they're machines, and they probably have, like, you know, sensors all over them, so they probably have that, like, the equivalency of, like, observation hockey in that way. And considering how tough a lot of the pacifistas were to begin with, and these are the newer versions of them, probably stronger, they probably have hard enough skin that having armament hockey isn't really going to make much of a difference on them. So those things are kind of accounted for in these things, particularly if Vegapunk is kind of the one that had to design these. Which, considering that they're made by the SSG, the Special Science Group, that's definitely the case. But, so we have the Mihawk one, and we have the Boa one. So there's the question of how many other warlords do they have, like, tiny versions of? And I kind of went over this in the comment that I left on Grandline Review, where it's, okay, so is, you know, Buggy's been a warlord for probably a little under 2 years or so, given the time skip and everything when they made him a warlord. You know, he's been a warlord, and he's probably had to go to one of the warlord meetings at some point in time. And, you know, even though Hancock didn't really go to any of the meetings or anything along those lines, there may have been an instance where they were able to get, like, a genetic sample of her, or they just kind of, like, looked at Boa Hancock, and they, like, maybe found, like, one of her very young wanted posters from when she first became, you know, a pirate, and then, you know, when she first became the captain of the Kuja Pirates, and then before they made her a warlord, we then see her, and then, like, they're like, oh, well, we can make this look like a younger version of her. And then they just kind of play with that. Because I highly doubt that the world government knows that Boa used to be a slave, that Boa and her sisters used to be slaves to the world nobles. But the thing that I was trying to get at was, like, the world government, of course, with the celestial dragons and, you know, Im-sama and the Gorosei at the top, see themselves as gods. So them having these, you know, seraphim, particularly if they are specifically designed to represent an angel, and if they're based off of the same type of a seraphim that is described within probably a different version of, like, a holy text in, like, the One Piece world, then they were possibly, you know, they was like, oh, well, we'll call them seraphim because those are the ones that are, you know, the most, you know, the closest to God. So for, you know, and if they're based off the Lunarians as well, which given the wings and the fire and the tan skin, they probably are. If they're based off of the Lunarians as well, then it's like, okay, so, like, the world government had toppled the Lunarians, and now they're like, okay, well, now we're just going to use the genetics from King combined with the genetics from some of the warlords, or, like, the appearances of the warlords. And the Mihawk one clearly has some form of Mihawk skill with the sword. I highly doubt it has all of his skill with the sword, but it has, like, a copy of Yoru, so I highly doubt that that's, I highly doubt Mihawk's going to let that slide for a long period of time once he finds out about them. But they have these Seraphim now, and those are designed to probably specifically be able to be deployed by the world government, depending on how many of them there are. And specifically designed to be deployed by the Gorosei and Im-sama. Even though the rest of the world government in the world doesn't know about Im-sama, the Gorosei know about Im-sama, and Im-sama can just be like, send out the Seraphim. I tire of this revolutionary army, or, well, maybe not the army, but, like, I tire of these warlords. Send out the Seraphim. I wish to see them fall. That might be what happened. You know, after they, you know, eliminated the warlord system at the Reverie. And, you know, so that kind of leads into the thing of, like, I also want to put this, if it's, like, the world governor is like, okay, we're going to base them off of the Lunarians as well, because Vegapunk, like, took that knowledge as well and, like, based them off the Lunarians. It's also like, okay, now we have these weird mutated versions of the Lunarians serving us, which I'm pretty sure is not going to make King happy if he ever finds out about them. But again, that describes on whether or not King is still alive after what happened with Green Bull, but we'll see what happens with that. Kind of hope King's not dead. I don't care if Queen is dead. Queen and Jack can die. I don't care. I don't want King to die. I actually liked King out of the Toby Ropo. Out of the, out of the All-Stars, I actually liked King. But so we have that thought. And so there's this whole concept of, like, okay, well, which other versions of them are there? Because if there is a Buggy one, and it's just like, okay, so we already know what Buggy looked like as a child from like the flashbacks we had with Shanks and then like the whole Odin flashback and everything. So we know what Buggy looked like as a child. And then we have Crocodile, and Oda has drawn art of Crocodile as a child. I'm not going to touch the male-female thing because I don't really care. And Crocodile was a warlord for a very long time, and depending on how long they had this plan in the works, because Crocodile probably would have had to go to like different meetings and stuff like that for the Warlord Council and stuff like that. Boa seemed to be the only one that didn't really want to go, and Mihawk probably didn't go very much either, but they would have had to have gone at some point. To like appease the world government, and her sisters probably would have convinced Boa to go. But you know, if they get Crocodile's genetics, and he was also in Impel Down for a while, so it's like there were multiple opportunities where he was imprisoned and on his way there to being in prison to Impel Down that he would have been in Sea Stone handcuffs, and they probably would have been able to get like a genetic sample from him of either his hair or his saliva or his blood or something. And then like they took that because Vegapunk may have been like, I need like genetic samples of like the warlords. And we have no idea how long, as I said, we don't know how long the SSG has been around, and we don't know how long this concept of like the Seraphim have been around. Because we don't know exactly when the Pacifistas were built either. We have a rough idea for like when like Kuma joined the Warlords and then when he was like the prototype and stuff like that. So there's at least some idea in there, but you know, maybe Vegapunk had been gathering up this information for a while anyway, because they had King on Punk Hazard like over 30 years ago. We know that with the flashback that we got with Kaido and King. We know that he was there for quite a long time, you know, over 30 years ago. So they've had that genetic sample probably from King for a while, along with any they did a whole lot of torture on him, unfortunately, so that would have resulted in a whole lot of, ideas about how the Lunarians are different from humans and like the different types of, I guess, abuse, unfortunately, that their body can take. But with that, you know, they have Crocodile there. Doflamingo, again, was a warlord for quite a long time. And, you know, he was captured by the world government, by the Marines, after what happened at, you know, Dressrosa. And they had ample opportunity, probably during that time frame, to get a hold of some of his genetics, if not at some of the other meetings and everything like that. Considering that I know that a lot of the times, like, I know on cop shows, they'll do things where they, like, you know, have someone drink water or tea or something like that, and then like they can use the genetics that's now on the cup from the saliva or something like that. I don't know. But like, you know, they do something like that where they've gotten a hold of that from them. You know, Kuma, he willingly gave himself over, so it's not like the world government didn't have access to his genetics anyway, in that regard from Vegapunk. Law is kind of an iffy one, because you know, he's been a warlord for, you know, was a warlord for less than 2 years. And considering how much, you know, medical knowledge Law has in and of himself, he may not have allowed them to get a hold of anything like that, just out of, you know, I'm not going to let them get a hold of any of that stuff. But admittedly, a tiny Law running around causing havoc. Actually, we just get like a Doflamingo flashback again in that regard for Law's childhood. For Law stabbing Coruscant. So we have that. Jinbei, moving on to Jinbei. With Jinbei, there's this whole concept of like, you know, he's been a warlord. He was a warlord for a while, and then of course he resigned and everything. But with Jinbei, you know, they had him in Impel Down. That's where we were introduced to him, was when he was in Impel Down, and you know, he'd been beaten a bit while he'd been down there, so there's a possibility that they got some of his genetics then, so like a tiny version, you know, a mini version of Jinbei running around. That would be interesting. That has these different powers and such. Then we have Weevil. I don't really think we really get anything out of Weevil. I mean, with as strong as he was, I mean, like, I guess they would maybe want to find a way to, like, clone him and be able to control that, but I don't really know. I don't really think a tiny Weevil, you know, little mini Weevil would be all that cute. Well, most of the rest of these would be kind of cute, I guess. And then Gecko Moria, again, he was a warlord for quite a while. There's always a possibility that, we know that Kuma was on Punk Hazard, or not on Punk Hazard. We know that Kuma was on, Thriller Bark, and that during the time frame that he was there, after all the Straw Hats got knocked out, Mori's body was kind of left to its own devices. I don't remember exactly what happened. I know eventually Moria and Hogback escaped, and then we know, and Absalon escaped, and then we know stuff happened at, Marineford and everything with that. But Kuma may have very easily gotten a genetic sample from, Gecko Moria while he was there on Thriller Bark during that time frame. So that's a possibility. And then we have Blackbeard. And Blackbeard, I kind of lean more towards probably not. He wasn't a warlord for very long. Like, I want to say, like, he was probably a warlord for maybe, like, 2-3 months at the most. Not very long between, Bonaro Island and then, Marineford and everything. He was not a warlord very long. I don't think they would have gotten a hold of his DNA very easily. So I don't really think there's any mini Blackbeard, but, we could find out that that's wrong, and there might be one. All depends on whatever happened in that regard, but I wanted to point out the fact of, like, if they have a mini Mihawk, a mini Buggy, and a mini Crocodile versus the Cross Guild, that would be a very interesting fight between those two groups. Buggy versus Buggy, Mihawk versus Mihawk, Crocodile versus Crocodile. Just, like, I could see a bunch of their underlings are like, Buggy was cute. What happened? Buggy used to be so cute when he was tiny. What happened? Then again, we could just have Shanks show up and, like, wipe the floor with, like, mini Buggy or something like that. I don't know. Although, well, no, Shanks is smart enough to, like, probably see through this whole ruse. But I do admit them sending the mini Boa to attack Amazon Lily, admittedly in strategy from the world government side of view, very good idea, because A, it's sending what appears to be a young, a female child into Amazon Lily where they don't want to hurt, they don't generally want to hurt women there, that, that type of a thing. And, like, children are probably prized anyway, but also it looks like their queen, their empress, so they probably wouldn't want to attack it because it would throw them off guard right away. And Sandersonia and Marigold specifically say that it looked exactly like their sister when they were young. So, and we have no idea how quickly these things age, if they're going to stay at child level, because it's like that one makes the most sense to send the children into battle to, like, throw your enemies off guard. That makes perfect sense. A lot of people have pointed that out. I know that. But, so we have that. But, like, yeah, this mini Cross Guild versus regular Cross Guild would be kind of funny. And, so we have those. But so those have been talked about, I'm sure, a whole lot. But the two more modern references I wanted to pull up in regards to, or mention in regards to, kind of genetic experiments, or experiments in regards to children. And I'm not going to go super dark with either of these. The first one is actually, so the other night, like the night after I read this chapter, and I'm like, okay. And then I'm, like, laying in bed thinking about, like, children, weapons, glowing eyes. And then it hit me. Oh my god, Oda ripped off Spy Kids. Because, so, in the first Spy Kids movie, for anyone that has not seen the Spy Kids movie, or, well, I guess for anyone who has not seen it, this is spoilers, I guess, but for anyone who has, you'll know what I'm talking about in a minute. The whole plot of the movie is they want to get their hands on this, like, brain that, like, can mimic a human brain, and then they want to put copies of it into all of these different robotic children that look like the children of different, like, high-ranking officials, like, presidents and prime ministers and senators and, kings and queens and whatever. They want to get all of these different robot children, and then they want to be able to control them, and then they want to be able to send the robot children to, like, replace the real child, and then they can, like, use the robot children to, like, cause a whole bunch of problems in the world. And that is the intention. That is, like, part of the plot for, like, the bad guys and, like, the whole first Spy Kids movie. And, so we have that. So I had that pop into my head. And I'm like, but then there's the whole concept of, like, if Vegapunk is on the side of the revolutionaries, because there's stuff pointing to that because of stuff with Kuma and, like, the Kuma protecting the Straw Hat ship and, like, sending them to, like, places where they can actually get stronger and like all this other stuff, and like supposedly still kind of working with the Revolutionary Army, and that Vegapunk might be working with the Revolutionary Army. That if that's the case, then there has to be like a switch that, because like Vegapunk is smart enough, or at least let's put it this way, we give him enough credit to be smart enough to have like a switch within the pacifistas and in these new pacifistas that can just be like flipped, or that like his order supersedes all other orders. And there's a moment in the Spy Kids movie where they like where they like reprogram the Spy Kids, the robot kids, to like, to be good is to be bad, and to be bad is to be good. So they like flip that around. So it just like, it flips with like, be good, be good. And, you know, to be good is to be good, as opposed to be good is to be bad, type of a flip that they do there. And, you know, it makes the kids just act like kids. And then, like, the kids go off into the world and they actually, like, help people. Like, they pull people out of, like, burning buildings and, like, all this other stuff. And, like, they had, like, copies. They had, like, robot versions of, like, the two Spy Kids of, like, Junie and Carmen. And, like, they end up, like, being on, like, the kids show or whatever. But, you know, that's a whole other plot. But what we, you know, so there's that concept. And if Vegapunk is the one in charge of the Seraphim, which he is, but it depends on how much control he still has over them, that if it does end up being that, like, oh, the Revolutionary Army show up at, you know, Marijois to cause damage and to actually fight, and whatever happens with, like, the Celestial Dragons and the Marines and the Revolutionary Army and everything like that, that Vegapunk may just very well have, like, this switch that he can, like, just flip the switch, and all the Seraphim and the other pacifistas just, like, immediately turn on, you know, turn on the Marines. Probably not, like, indiscriminately against the Marines, because I think Vegapunk might be like, okay, some of these Marines are just here because they actually want to protect people, but, like, go after, like, specifically Marines that have, and not, like, hurt them, but, like, incapacitate them, prevent them so they can't, like, escape, but, like, they can't fight either, but not kill them, or, you know, permanently scar them or injure them or something like that, but enough to, like, incapacitate them. And then that could result in, like, Mihawk and Mini Mihawk working together, which would be adorable, or like Boa or like Hancock and Mini Hancock working together, which would just be adorable in and of itself. And we have no idea if these pacifistas, if the Seraphim have any form of a personality. They may not, and even if they do, it may not be much of one, and it may not be anything like the personalities of their other ones, of like their adult counterparts, if that's who they're cloned from, or just look like. They're a robot, they can make them look like whatever the heck they want. But the other one that I wanted to compare it to, and this is regard to a genetic experiment. Stitch, anybody? What is Stitch designed to do in the beginning of Lilo and Stitch? He is designed to go into different areas and cause a ton of chaos, back up sewer system, steal everyone's left shoe, all this type of stuff. And, he's think faster than a supercomputer, can lift something, 10,000 times his own weight. He's his own size. He's indestructible. Take your pick. And in the beginning of the movie, we see Jumba there with, Stitch against the Grand Council. And, the Grand Council are technically good, but, they don't really see that Stitch has the potential for good in him. And I'm not saying that the Seraphim would be the same way as Stitch, because they may just literally be like a programmed mind, and they may not actually be able to learn. They seem to listen to Kobe, but he's also a captain in the Marines, so we'll see what happens with that. There might be certain ones that they're programmed to listen to, like captains and above and such, or maybe even, I don't think they would give them control. I don't think they would give the really low ranks over them, but captain and above probably. Captain all the way up through, fleet admiral obviously would be able to order them around, I would assume, but we see that with Kobe ordering them around. But what happens with Stitch is he shows up on Earth, and the first image we have of him on Earth is him coming out of the rubble and just going maniacal laughter all over the place, and glowing eyes, and just looks angry and everything. And then he looks like a demon coming out of that, which I just find hilarious, because just the end of the previous scene was Lilo praying, wishing on the star to Santa. wait, was it Santa's? I don't remember. I don't remember if she specifically says Santa or not, but she like prays to someone and she's like, send me an angel, the nicest angel you have. Stitch, rocket ship, crash lands, out comes Stitch. Ends up working out in the end. And there's also a moment in the movie where, and I went over a whole bunch more of like Stitch related, like I've talked about Stitch in several videos already, but the other thing that happens is there's a moment in the movie where Stitch goes off in the forest. It's after he's gotten to know Lilo and Nani and everything, and he goes off into the forest, and he, is like lost because he's trying to find his family, and Jumbo just shows up and he's like, oh no, no, I'm the one that made you. You don't have any other family. In retrospect, we know this is a lie because it has all the other previous 625 experiments that are his cousins, but at the context of the original movie, we don't know this yet. We don't know that. And Stitch, it's just like, you're just something that I created and I'm going to take you apart. I don't think Vegapunk looks at his creations quite that way, but we of course know that Jumbo comes around, and then of course at the end of the movie is of course when Stitch, of course, Ohana is family. Family means nobody, look, it's fine. These are my family and everything like that. And we see that Stitch grew. I'm not saying that they're going to be able to make the Seraphim good by introducing them to a small Hawaiian child and playing Elvis music and giving them love. I'm not saying that's going to happen. If we teach the Seraphim about Ohana, it'll make everything fine. Or well, I guess in the case of One Piece, we're not going to teach. I don't think teaching the Seraphim about Nakama will make everything fine. Now I kind of want to see that. I kind of want to see that. But I don't think that's going to happen. But that would be hilarious. But I don't. It all depends on what else we learn about the Seraphim. Do they have like minds of their own? Do they have personalities? Do they have the ability to learn? That type of a thing. If they do, there's the possibility that, maybe not the whole Stitch route and everything, but like something along the lines of like, that, or if it is like the Vegapunk thing, or it's just like, oh, well, I designed them to, have like a switch in them, or like a, an order that like, if given by me, or like Garp or Sengoku or someone, or Dragon possibly, I don't know, it depends on what Vegapunk coded into the thing, coded into their programming, could just be like, oh, at this moment in time, when these correct conditions are met, you will flip, your allegiance will flip, and your allegiance will be to, the Revolutionary Army, possibly the Straw Hat Pirates, possibly, but like the Revolutionary Army specifically. And then your new mission then is to like incapacitate these Marines and the world government, and specifically like the Tenryubito and the Gorosei, and like find a way to like incapacitate them, not kill, but like capture them and make them that they're not a threat at the moment, that they are currently like off the grid or off the playing field, so they can't do anything. That type of thing. That might be the case. We don't know. But I just wanted to point those out because like those are just like the two instances in like, I guess, more recent pop culture that I had in regards to, well, I wouldn't call Spy Kids recent, but Spy Kids. It's been a long time since I've seen Spy Kids, now that I think about it. But yeah, I may have to watch those soon. That's been a while. But so I just wanted to put those in there. Shaki is a queen, or a former queen at this point in time. Not that Rayleigh has ever not treated her like a queen, I would assume. And if he ever disrespected her, I'm sure she would just like kick his butt. But I wanted to point that out. I put the comment up on the Grand Line review. I highly doubt it's going to get used in the video. If it does, that would be funny. But if it didn't, then oh well. But I wanted to make this video anyway. So ended up being longer than I anticipated, but I thought of a few things while I was going through. So that's what I have. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked one of the concepts that I came up with for the Seraphim or something along those lines, please comment or whatever. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye. My name is Dracula Mihawk. It's too soon for you to die. Discover yourself, see the world, and grow strong, Zoro. However long it may take, I shall await you at the top. Strive with your whole heart and mind to best this blade, fierce one. strive to surpass me, Roronoa Zoro.